and talking to a person. So in some ways, you might think that talking to a person would be more helpful, but in some ways it takes more effort and you're more exposed, maybe more embarrassed talking to a person. And so talking to an app reduces that barrier.
With Checkup on Health, I'm Chris Whitting.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
You are listening to Think Theory Radio. Radio.
Hello and welcome to Think Theory Radio, the show that brings you topics outside the mainstream realm of thought and ideas to make you think. And I'm your host, Damian Perdue, your guide on this radio ride of audio delights. And today, I was about to say, of course, I'm joined by...
I guess for the second time in a row now.
Second time in a row, Maddie B for Paulie C.
Good to be here. Very good to be here.
I think that might actually be a record. I don't think Paul's missed 2 weeks in a row in a long time.
Yeah, I don't know.
If ever. He's very consistent.
He's a pretty consistent guy, so all the best to him.
Yes. Hope he heals up, be all right, and be back next week, hopefully. Glad to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
And I know usually, and people that listen to the show know that I love to talk about kind of the interconnectedness of all things, whether it's the universe and how it ties into the human body, or the ecosystem and how it ties into society. Well, in light of everything that's going on today and overall in the atmosphere of the country, I figured out what's a good way to do a think theory version of it. And I came up with the idea of 6 degrees of immigration and how immigration in itself is inextricably tied to our society, American culture, the economy, innovation, technology, and just even the founding of this country.
Absolutely.
You know, it's an interwoven web. You know, a country obviously built on immigrants. I mean, the Pilgrims were immigrants, people. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah. I know my great-great-grandparents did not, they were not, born and raised here. They came from another country, and I think most of us can say that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm third generation. My great-grandparents were either from Italy or Ireland, depending on the side of the family.
All over the globe.
Yeah. And I've had, got family from Scotland, England, all over there. And most people I know, same thing. Unless you are an indigenous tribal member, you probably have family that came from another country.
That's right.
And there is a huge impact throughout the years. And unfortunately, tied in also to that is the kind of xenophobia, fear, hatred of foreigners. And this goes back even within our history. As much as it's tied into immigrants coming here and becoming, part of this country and creating a new, country based on democracy and freedom, there was also a lot of, whether or not it was the German immigrants or Irish immigrants or Italian immigrants or Chinese coming over, everyone faced a very similar backlash. And, there was even back in the 1800s, early 1900s, there was a political movement called the Nativists. And they were, they called, which is kind of funny because they called themselves Native Americans back then. This is before we used that term for indigenous people. And they, they considered themselves, because they were, whatever, 4th or 5th generation born in this country, that they were native-born American. And we didn't want these Germans coming here and these Irish taking our jobs, and every iteration, it's gone through the same thing. The Chinese faced horrible persecution, and when they came here, they're building the railroads, and over and over again. It goes on, and then Mexican population and African and Indian, and so on and so forth. But I thought about it was a couple different reasons I was thinking of this show. One was I was listening to another radio program, and they were talking about the effect of this deportation within the boomer senior care sector. So you have Haitians make up a huge portion of caregivers in this country. I think you have about 350,000 Haitians that work in the caregiving industry. While you have boomers are starting to age out, and a lot of them are going to be going into senior facilities to be taken care of by Haitians. Now, a lot of them have been working in this sector for decades, and the interesting thing is that it's impacting Florida heavily, because this is a huge senior retirement community area, state, and there's tons of Haitians there that take care of the seniors. So they start getting deported, you're going to have a huge gap in that industry itself. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because it's just a sector I didn't think about. We all think of construction or farming or people working in warehouse, the Amazon warehouse, all these different big corporate, type of jobs.
It's not obvious. It's not the first thing that comes to mind.
No. Yeah, exactly. So that made me think of, wow, how much immigration is tied into all these different sectors in our society, And the second one is about different. It was a show that I was watching. I was telling you guys before the show. It was actually like a cooking show, and I forget the woman's name, but she's a chef in the South. She does a lot of Southern cuisine, and she went to. There's a town in, and I'll get more to that in the later segment. In Georgia, that was it's a refugee hub, and so that made me think of, okay, well, how many other towns are like that? How many other small town America has been revitalized by the refugees or immigrants? And we think about how much they're tied into the economy, and not just the economy, but like population. So you have the American population's declining. Americans don't have as many kids as we used to. And that's not something that's going to change. This is just something that happens in first world countries. Once people have more money, they have less kids. This is something historically that has happened throughout time. And every generation kind of has less kids the more that generation makes money, And I think I was seeing a statistic that said in order to maintain just the world population, everyone would have to have, I think, 2 kids or whatever it is, And our American rate is about 1.5 or 1.7. So it's underneath the amount that we need to sustain a population that can sustain an economy.
Yeah.
Right? So
it reminds me of some places in the world that offer to people who live there, so-and-so amount of money if they have children. I believe that was a thing going on in Italy not too long ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and and I thought about that too. It's like this, I could easily branch this out to a world topic, and how it affects every country. But that's, we only have an hour, And I mean, and just in a small way, I can tell you this, the amount of money when you have people coming in from other countries, especially third world countries or poorer nations, and they work here, what happens is not only does it benefit our country through taxes. I mean, you have, I think it's estimated about 11 million undocumented workers in the U.S. They contribute $90 billion in taxes every year.
Wow.
Now, this is taxes going for programs that only really benefit American citizens, like Social Security, health care. Those undocumented workers cannot access that, but they're still paying taxes.
They're contributing, but they're not benefiting.
Exactly. Now, they're contributing, they're not benefiting, but they're also, now that's just how they're contributing to this country, but they're also sending money back to their country. Now, some anti-immigrant, they're giving the money back to, No, but that helps the world economy. We live in a world, and I'm not, a globalist or, whatever. Although I do think a one world government might be a little bit better. But anyway, it's, we live in a geopolitical economic system. Everything is tied in together, right? And you've seen it already when the pandemic hit, and how supply demand and everything was screwed up, and it really affected everybody because there was something wasn't getting made here, wasn't getting made over there. You see how with the tariffs, what it's doing, because you have a microchip made for a car that's made in this country, or you have this part's made over here, and you can't put the car together if you don't have all these parts. So this is all tied in together. So if they're giving money back to their country and that country benefits and gets up, it helps everybody.
We're all connected somehow.
Exactly.
We're all stuck on the same globe, unfortunately.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like, and that's another good point. I just always feel like, how it's 2026, right? Human civilization, society has been around like 10,000 years. And yet we still rely on these like nationalistic pride things and view ourselves from different countries. And we're on the same planet, man. Like we're all human, We
need that Star Trek future where everyone's unified against the Romulans or the Klingons. That's when we really unite.
Yeah. Well, that's what's going to happen, man, when the aliens then we'll finally unite.
Not to spoil a good book. I won't mention what book it is, but the big twist is that aliens land on Earth and it solves world peace is created like almost immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suss out which book it was.
I'll have to guess. It's funny. It just made me think of there was a sci-fi show. I think it was called Alienation.
Yeah.
You remember that? And it was
Alan
about
Tudyk, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was about alien refugees. I mean, obviously, it was a metaphor for immigration, but it was, I love when I can like tie sci-fi into anything. But it was a pretty good show. And it was kind of that. It was instead of aliens coming that had advanced technology that brought peace, they came here because they had nowhere to go and they had to rely on us, and they were obviously treated badly and all this stuff. But it was also like a buddy cop show. It was like, that was pretty good. But so back to just if you think about the effect on our country, money wise, everything. I was looking up some statistics, and for those who there's all just liberal propaganda. Where'd you get your numbers? Well, I got some of this from some very conservative. I mean, this is coming from the Cato Institute. It was a very conservative think tank. I mean, Tucker Carlson's a member. But when you have this slower population growth, we're talking about the population, and the labor force growth in the United States also has been declining for decades, falling by 65% from the 1960s. This is when the immigrant share of the population bottomed out to the most recent decade. It fell faster among those without a college degree from 1995 to 2022. Immigrants and their children accounted for 70% of labor force growth. And over the last 2 years, immigrants accounted for 100% of the increase in the working age population. And without immigrants, the working age population will fall by about 6 million in the next 2 decades. The total U.S. population would decline without any immigration by 2040. And also estimates there was another study I was looking up that was kind of pro deportation, but they also, the statistics they were showing were saying, well, if we're going to do this, in order for this to work, it will take 10 years at the rate that we're going, that Trump is trying to deport people. It would take 10 years of this same rate of deportation to barely start getting the job back to unskilled native-born American workers. Now, that's just considering all things go well, right? Because, I mean, honestly, and I've said this on the show before, I don't really think that what's happening now with ICE and Border Patrol and the immigration policies is really totally about the migrants. I think this has a lot to do with the people who are backing Trump, like the PayPal mafia guys and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, Ken Howry, all these guys who are heavily involved in AI, robotics, and they're trying to. This is my personal belief, and I think there are others who are saying this too, is that they want to create more automation, more AI, and they know through this there's going to be huge job losses. So I think this is kind of a way to start phasing in that. Because if you have an influx of immigrants who will take lower paying jobs that Americans won't, then you can't really introduce a lot of the robotics and automation. But if you have less and less workers, and then they can use the excuse of, well, Americans aren't taking the jobs, so we're going to have to use the robotics and the automation.
That's a really good point. I don't think I've heard that before.
Yeah.
But that's like something out of like we were talking about sci-fi earlier.
Yeah.
That's something out of straight up sci-fi. Replace the working force with automated non-human robots.
Yeah.
That's pretty insidious.
Yeah. And it's not to keep going sci-fi, but I do love sci-fi. If you think about the Matrix and Terminator and other, they always they've started with robots being essentially used as kind of slave labor because they don't have a conscience and you don't have to pay them, right? And eventually, as singularity happens and they do start to have some form of consciousness or at least a belief in their independent nature, they rise up.
Westworld style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know if you ever saw the Animatrix.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So that was like one of the episodes was all about how the robots were getting beat down and just like pretty much what's happens all the time through what we're talking about. And that eventually leads to them getting their own country, and then that country becomes the most advanced technological country in the world. They end up taking over the world. That's how like the Matrix starts. But same thing with with Skynet and Terminator. But yeah, so that's my little moderate conspiracy theory for that. And I don't think it's out of pocket to think that, right?
Yeah, not a lot of positive representation of robots in media. They usually end up taking over, or enslaving humankind. Or there was a science fiction book from years ago. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Yeah,
are you familiar with that one?
No.
It ends up with this super intelligent computer only having about 7 human beings left, and spends the rest of eternity torturing them.
Oh wow!
He just has nothing but hate in his soul. It was turned into a video game in the late '90s.
Okay,
worth looking into.
I have an interesting thing about video games and immigrants that I'm bringing up later, because what I want to do is the next segment I want to get into what I was talking about with the small towns and how they're affected, and then the third segment I want to get into innovators, innovation, technology, and things that people think are American homegrown but are actually created by immigrants. Real quick before we go to break, though, I just want to read another statistics is what's going to happen to Social Security. And people don't realize that the cost of deporting people also will decrease Social Security money. Security will be short nearly 35 million workers to fund the system in the 2030s. It will have to cut benefits by at least 23% in 2034, if not earlier. The situation will not improve after that, with benefit cuts reaching 30% and the shortfall in workers hitting 80 million by 2080. And the present value cost of this worker shortage to U.S. retirees is about $24 trillion. So it affects every part of our society, whether you're retiring now or later. So it's something we need to curtail this, because it's not really benefiting anybody. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into how does immigration benefit small town America on Think Theory Radio right after this.
This is a WCPT Civil Rights Snapshot. In August of 2022, American Airlines hosted the Bessie Coleman Aviation All-Stars Tour, celebrating the 100th anniversary of Bessie Coleman performing the first public flight by a woman of color. Bessie was a phenomenal pilot, but her path to get there was far from easy. When Bessie was 23, she moved in with her brothers who were returning from World War I. Bessie's brothers would tease Bessie because in France, women were allowed to fly planes, something Bessie could not. Determined, Bessie applied to several flight schools across the country, where she was declined for being a woman and being of color. Remembering what her brothers said, Bessie taught herself French and applied and was accepted to the Caudron Brothers School of Aviation in France and received her international pilot's license in 1921. Coleman traveled the country giving speeches and demonstrations, refusing to speak anywhere that was segregated. Sadly, in 1926, due to a loose wrench stuck in the engine, Bessie fell out of the plane to her death. Bessie's death was tragic, but it shows that even in 2022, her legacy still lives on. Please stay vigilant about our civil rights. The fight is never over.
WCPT Replay.
joining us now on the phone is gay icons, living legend, John Waters. Your body of work has shaped the lives of so many people. Like, even this morning, my neighbor was texting me. She's like, please tell him that Crybaby was my gay awakening.
Funny, because there's no gay characters in Crybaby.
I know, but there's something about, like, your movies, the embracing of camp, the embracing of tacky, the just all-out just queer counterculture nature. Do you ever feel a responsibility for lifting the voice of the counterculture?
Well, I'm proud of it when people say that, I made them feel okay about themselves. And I wrote a whole book called Role Models about the people that did that for me. Yeah. Everybody needs a bad influence they can look up to.
Keep listening to WCPT 820. Because facts matter. Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. Today we're talking about the 6 degrees of immigration. And for those of you that don't know, the 6 degrees of separation is the theory that every person in the world is separated by at least 6 or, six or less people, which I do believe is true, because I can tie myself to the King Charles if I wanted to.
I think I can tie myself to Bigfoot if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a will, there's a way.
And Bigfoot's an illegal alien, man. And speaking, I do love that Brandon Johnson's been kind of going after that terminology, instead of saying like undocumented people, they like to say illegal aliens and might try to make it into some sci-fi thing. And I think like most people that listen to this station know that, all the, statistics they say and that, they're just going after the worst of the worst and the criminals. Obviously not true. And we saw what happened today in Minneapolis and what happened 2 weeks ago. And people forget this happened twice in Chicago. They killed a man after, dropping his kids off. They shot that woman. She's lucky she survived. They shot her, they rammed her car and then shot her 5 or 6 times here in Chicago, and then bragged about it after. So, that, and it just shows you in this day and age how, unfortunately, with the kind of rapid 24-hour news cycle and everything that changed, social media, people have kind of like already forgotten about that. And that only happened in, it was like September or something, or late summer. But anyway, it's all tragic. And, I just think that, like, if there's anyone listening that doesn't agree, and I can try to get across to you that this is just, non-fortuitous propaganda agendas that they're trying to do, it's so obvious to me. Like, what I said is the one part I think that they're trying to create this opening for automation and robotics. I think another part is it's testing ground of there's probably 3 parts. One is like this retribution thing towards kind of democratic run cities and states. The other one is like, well, let's see how much we can get away with in terms of creating even more of a police state. When you think of what's going on with ICE and the Border Patrol and setting up shop and trying to and try to put in National Guard troops in these cities, I believe this is all kind of like testing ground, because a lot of it has to do with, the late stage capitalism. And they know that with AI implementation and everything that's going to be happening, like, people are going to be losing a lot of jobs. And if they don't start, and this is from, low skilled workers to upper echelon, CEOs, there's going to be no need for them in a short future. And unless they do some kind of universal basic income, there's going to be a lot more like riots in the street and stuff. And I think they're testing it out to see, well, how can we do this? I mean, especially if you think about how it ties in, Peter Thiel, who I brought up already, who's one of the biggest investors in the Trump presidency. And, he created Palantir, which is a huge surveillance network that who uses it? ICE and Border Patrol and the U.S. government to surveil people. But anyway.
And it's interesting because these, last 2 people who were killed in Minneapolis, not immigrants.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know,
exactly.
it's interesting that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is not involved with immigrants in this case, in both these cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this, you know, it's so disturbing, and I hope that people that were on the fence or on the other side that will see, like, they don't care, you know? So they're obviously not going after the worst. We already know this from their own statistics. I think it's 70% of the people that have been, incarcerated, deported, don't have criminal records. And if you are here, you know, just, you know, quote unquote, illegally as a citizen, that's not a criminal offense. That's a civil offense. So that, to say they're criminals because they're here illegally is not true. And another problem too, just think about the money. We have, they say that it's been, we have like 67,000 deportations in 2025. And then they added another 1,900,000 of quote unquote, self deportations at the cost of. And now here's an interesting thing too: is they say that they're giving, people who want to self deport $1,000 to $3,000 to do it, plus the flight to their home country. And I was reading an article in The Guardian, and they were saying that, like, they've interviewed tons of immigrants in their home countries who did the self-deportation thing that have not gotten the money. So you wonder if this is, and I don't know the numbers on that. I don't know how many are getting it, how many aren't, but there obviously is a number of them that aren't. And I mean, if anyone, even just as a U.S. citizen, has dealt with the U.S. government and trying to get money back, you know that they don't try to give you money. So,
they usually don't hand money out.
Exactly.
Not about that.
Yeah. So, where's that money going? Where's this supposed, if you're paying out, 2 million people $1,000 each or whatever, I don't know what the number is, 200 million or something, whatever, But it's about, they say that they put in $250 million in the budget for each year for this, deportation thing. So you're spending $250 million, supposedly, and you're losing $90 billion in the taxes. You're thinking about like construction jobs, farming. I was looking up this one thing. Construction has averaged about 354,000 job openings per month in 2023. And manufacturing averaged about 650,000. There was a major project funded partly by the U.S. taxpayers to build a new TSMC microchip manufacturing facility in Arizona, and it's already being delayed because of the shortage of experienced workers in the construction trade. Leisure and hospitality averaged 1.4 million. Trade, transportation, utilities are 1.6 million. Education and health services were nearly 2 million. And this is short, long-term labor fall is not just a skills gap issue. Labor demand has increased and will increase across these skill spectrums, everything from construction workers, web developers, all this. And
these correlate to around the time that these mass deportations started.
Yeah, wow. Exactly, yeah. And it goes back. I mean, this isn't just the Trump administration's, Biden administration, Obama administration. I mean, and you think of like, a lot of people don't know that ICE is not that old. It started after 9/11. There used to be the INS. And INS, and even early on ICE, it was a very different style of, government work. It wasn't these guys with paramilitary outfits and masks. It was mostly, men and women in suits that would go to people's, knock on doors and say, hey, you didn't fill out your form properly, or we need to make an appointment for you to come down to the office, or you might get deported, or whatever. It was done much more like a legally kind of. And
now they just wear hoodies.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sweatpants too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're out there in camo. I mean, and they're like, I've seen pictures where, and like people who are actual like gun aficionados who are kind of making fun of these guys. They have all these extra added attachments to these, guns. And it's just to make it look cooler. Like there's no usage for it whatsoever when you're walking around a city street.
It reminds me of in high school, you had some kids who played D&D. Now, D&D is very popular now, but that's sort of that like LARPing style. Yeah. Like you have your sword and you add, flames to the side of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But kind of back to like how it helps and benefits the country. And one of the things that influenced this idea of the show, I was telling you a little bit earlier about, I was watching the show, and it was talking about this town in Georgia, which is Clarkston, Georgia, and they call it the Ellis Island of the South. And it's considered the most diverse square mile in America. And they've resettled over 60,000 refugees from 60-plus countries since the 1980s. It became a resettlement hub due to affordable apartment housing, proximity to Atlanta, access to public transportation. And when I saw it on the show, I thought it was really interesting because she was saying, she was trying to show different forms of cooking. So, wow, this town has one of the hugest refugee and immigrant population in the country for such a small area. And she was going to these different markets that had all the different ethnic foods, and they're showing like all the different, like Ethiopian food and Indian food, Syrian food. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I've never heard of it, one. Two, the fact that it's in the South, not to be northern bias, but I just thought that was an interesting thing. At that time, Georgia was a Republican state. I know they have a Democrat mayor now, but so to think, here's what we consider kind of Republican South, a town full of refugees and immigrants, huge diversity. It's approximately half of the city's 1.79 square mile population is foreign-born. There's residents originate from anywhere from Bhutan, Burma, Congo, Syria, various African nations, Bosnia. There's over 110 languages are spoken throughout that community. And I thought, wow, that is really interesting. Why isn't that talked about more? Why isn't that brought up as a great example of what to do in small towns, right? Like I thought of, especially when, Abbott and DeSantis were bussing up all the immigrants here to Chicago as like some kind of punishment. Like we couldn't handle that. But we did, And I work with a ton of Venezuelans and Colombians. I'm going to tell you, they're really hard workers. And, they love being here and they're happy to be here and contribute. But I thought, well, why don't we do a similar thing like Clarkston in cities around the country? Well, there are other cities around the country. I thought, well, like small towns, if you think of, you watch a million documentaries on, kind of Rust Belt communities and these small coal mining towns where there's no, coal mining anymore, that are just really depleted with resources, really poor. One of the ways you can revitalize it is through immigration and refugee asylum. So I looked up some examples. One right here in Illinois, Beardstown, which I've never heard of, but I thought was an interesting name.
Very hairy place.
Yes. It's the place that originated the mutton chops.
Yeah.
They were facing decline with a lot of empty houses and businesses, and they experienced a significant influx of immigrants due to the local meatpacking industry starting in the 1990s. And this town, which has residents from over 30 countries, has seen its storefronts and neighborhoods revitalized, and the school district has grown. Utica, New York. This is a former manufacturing hub, so its population nearly halved after major companies like General Electric left. Since the late 1970s, the city has resettled over 17,000 refugees from more than 40 countries, including Bosnia, Vietnam, Burma, Somalia. And they've renovated abandoned houses, opened small businesses, and injected vitality into the local economy. Greenport, New York, once described as a dumpy, corrupt East End dead end. I don't know where that quote comes from.
Sounds picture perfect.
Apologize to Greenport. This village on Long Island's North Fork was revitalized in the 1990s by an influx of Hispanic immigrants who filled jobs in construction and landscaping. These newcomers became consumers and homeowners. They helped keep the local real estate market and Main Street businesses thriving. When you think about a lot of these small towns, you go visit, there's boarded up windows and there's no more stores. But a lot of the ones that have an influx of immigrants, it gets revitalized. And you have the Main Street is open again. Another one is Austin, Minnesota. That has attracted migrants who helped expand its population and revitalize local economy, which relies on a pork processing plant. The community has focused on promoting refugee entrepreneurship and successful integration initiatives. West Liberty, Iowa, is a population that is over 50% Hispanic and 25% foreign-born. West Liberty is a great example of immigrant-driven development, largely due to a turkey processing plant. The town boasts a dual-language school program and revived commercial district, with the former mayor noting that without the Hispanic community, many downtown businesses would be empty.
Wow.
Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. This town has prospered with a large immigrant population, primarily working in the local mushroom industry. These residents have opened bustling businesses, restaurants, and contributed significantly to the community's economic and cultural life. And those are just some examples. I'm sure, if you wanted to dig deeper, you could probably find them in every state. I mean, this is a deep impact,
Yeah, it's. I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, it's the country of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
I remember an old quote, and I can't remember who exactly said it, but it was something. You go to Italy, you can't be an Italian. You can go to Germany, you can't be a German. But you come to America, you can be an American. It's and that was an old.
Mm-hmm.
Old ideology of land of immigrants.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that still even in this day and age, where people know how hard it is to come here. That's what a lot of people don't realize. I have a lot of friends in other countries, and I've a lot of artist friends. People that listen to the show know I'm a graffiti artist, and I used to run a graffiti event here for about 15 years, and we'd get people coming in from other countries. And ones that would come from certain countries like Singapore, China, and Venezuela, and different, other countries that were more, considered, third world or whatever, they have a hard time getting in. I had to write letters for them with, and get it notarized and tell them, and have to write out this whole thing about like, look, they're just going to be here for a week. They're staying with me. They'll go back home, and whether it was their own government or whether it was our government, a lot of them got refused, even with the letter I wrote, and I had a friend who came out here a couple years ago, and he painted a mural in my neighborhood, and he was going to come back. And he has an uncle, he has family that lives here in the suburbs, and he was coming back last year. Not, I keep thinking 2025 is this year, but 2024. Yeah. In 2024, he was coming back just to visit. He got hung up at O'Hare Airport. He was interrogated by ICE agents, or I don't know if it's TSA or I don't know who handles it there, but for 5 hours. And they kept, telling him, we know you're coming here for work. And he was, no, I'm just coming here to visit. He really was. He was just coming here to visit. His family here. And nope, we know you're coming for work. Admit it. And this is the same tactics a lot of police use, just to get people to admit to a crime they didn't do. And after about 5 hours of interrogation, and what they did, they went through his phone and they found this text message from when he had did the mural. He was texting somebody, said, I just finished this, work on this mural. And, look, it says you worked here. Even though he didn't get paid for it, it was just like a community project, They're like, nope, see, that's proof. And after 5 hours interrogation, he just broke down and was like, oh, okay, I'm coming here for work. And they're like, oh, well, you're now banned for 5 years. They sent him back home.
From the country.
Yeah. He cannot come into the U.S. for 5 years. Who knows if he'll even be able to come in then.
Huh.
So it's not easy to get in. And people wonder why don't they do it legally? Because it's not easy. Yeah. And it's one of the hardest places, one, to enter. Two, if you're from certain countries especially. Two, to get citizenship. It's not easy, people. So stop using that excuse. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into who are some of these major inventors and innovations, technology that are foreign-born but American-made. On Think Theory Radio, right after this.
It's the Democracy, Stupid, with Edwin Eisendrath.
Americans in the founding generation didn't fail to build a palace. They chose not to build a palace. George Washington designed the Oval Office, well, its predecessor, so that hierarchies of rank weren't built into gatherings in the space. Trump's Golden Ballroom is the architectural repudiation of those egalitarian ideals.
Saturdays at 1 p.m. on WCPT 820.
Hey Progressives, it's Richard Chu, host of Chu's Views weekdays 6 to 8 a.m. Central. We're all anxious for the 2026 midterm election to arrive so we can restore some sanity and much-needed oversight to our government. In fact, it's the most important midterm election in American history, and Choose Views will be in the thick of it, bringing you candidate interviews on a regular basis. I'll be talking to Democratic Party hopefuls running for House and Senate at the federal and state level, as well as candidates for governor and other state and local offices.
I am in love with our ability to fight for our rights, to fight for our future, to fight for our freedoms, to fight as our ancestors fought. It's just our moment. This is just our time to stand up and to speak up. We can't give up on this.
If you miss any of the interviews live, you'll be able to find them all on WCPT's candidate interviews page at heartlandsignal.com/candidates. That's Choose Views weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk for 20 years.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Welcome back to Think Theory Radio. This is Damien, and today we're talking about the 6 degrees of immigration. How have the interwoven web of immigrants benefited this country? And we've already talked about kind of statistics, job growth, population, taxes, Social Security. We talked about how they've revitalized small town America. What about, and this is one of my favorite, this segment I really wanted to get to too, because I love technology and inventors and innovation. And a lot of things that were made in America that we consider American made and we're proud of come from foreigners. Or at least foreign-born Americans, or however you want to say it. But before we get to some of the actual invent, I didn't know this part is pretty interesting. In terms of like science, engineering degrees, attending U.S. universities, which Trump is making even harder to do, immigrants obtain patents at twice the rate of Native Americans.
Wow.
Yeah, And we're not even the largest destination for foreign immigrants, but we do take in 57.1% of the world's inventor community. So we don't even take in the most immigrants, but we take in the most inventors because they know this is a country that you can get things made and get a patent,
Tesla, I believe, was also.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought him up because that's one of my favorite inventors.
Yeah.
I actually went to the Tesla Museum in Belgrade.
David Bowie in the Prestige.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. He, wireless energy transfer, wireless technology. We wouldn't have it if it wasn't for Tesla, right? He was from Serbia. And Albert Einstein, theory of relativity. People, not American born. There's another report from the Partnership for a New Economy found that 76% of the patents earned by the top 10 patenting American universities listed a foreign inventor. And so those are just some statistics. Now, what about something like that you think is very American, like the telephone? Well, Mr. Alexander Graham Bell was born in Edinburgh, Scotland, people.
Very not an American place, for sure.
Yeah. What are you talking about? So we got that. Now here, this is a great one because you have like a couple different things that we think of as, very like American food, right? Like the hot dog. What's more American than a hot dog? Well, that was invented by a German expat and popularized by a Polish immigrant. Obviously, that one kind of makes sense because we know sausages from German and Poland. So that's not too out of the ordinary, although we do consider hot dog as very kind of American thing.
Although
right?
we must have been conscious of some of that during World War II because we started to rename certain, I know Freedom Fries famously instead of French fries.
I'm glad that didn't stick. You know what they call French fries in France?
What's that?
American fries. No, Fritz. They don't call them French fries.
We
They're
were
in
Pulp Fiction for a second.
Yeah, Fritz.
There.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where it's. Now check it out. We were talking about video games earlier. Video games were invented in America after escape from Nazi Germany. Huh. Ralph Baer was born in 1922 in Rodalben, Germany, to Jewish parents. And they fled, just 2 months before the infamous Kristallnacht attacks. And he first conceived of the game box in the summer of 1966, which would be capable of playing sports, action, and board games through a television set. Bear's design would be licensed by Magnavox and sold as the Odyssey. I remember that video game system, too. The world's first commercial home video game system. So those that love playing video games, you owe it to a foreign-born person.
Pretty revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's more American than blue jeans. Well, Mr. Levi Strauss was a German immigrant, people.
If you didn't get that by the name, Levi Strauss.
Yeah.
It's not exactly, Joe Smith.
Right, exactly. John Brown. What else we got? Now, this is a great one. Because this really, what's more American than American cheese? Well, James L. Kraft wound up in Chicago, Illinois after leaving his native country of Canada. Oh, Canada.
That's got a sting for a lot of Americans.
Right?
American cheese is from a Canadian-born man.
Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
I never thought of that. Like, I knew the tie with Kraft in Chicago. I didn't know he was from Canada, though. That's very interesting, especially American cheese made by a Canadian. Great stuff. Basketball. Who's a lover of basketball? Well, Mr. Naismith, James Naismith, was born in Ontario, another Canadian. Look how much we owe to these Canadians.
Canadians did more than I was previously aware.
Yeah. The automated teller machine, or the ATM as we know it, was invented from an Armenian. Luther George Simeon was able to make his way out of the bloodshed from the Armenian genocide in 1915 to 1923, came over at the age of 15, and he would earn more than 200 patents in the fields of optics and electronics, and became best known for his 1960 invention of the bankograph, the world's first automated teller machine, which I thought that was pretty interesting. And here we are. What are we on right now?
The radio, I believe.
Yeah, broadcast radio. Well, born in 1925, 1878 in Uppsala, Sweden, Ernst F. Alexanderson would end up having a huge impact on electrical engineering during his days at GE. Wow. And Alexander immigrated to the United States specifically to work with renowned mathematician and engineer Charles Proteus Steinmetz, which was Steinmetz High School here in Chicago. And the pair was able to demonstrate the transmission of the human voice across telegraph wires in December 1906. One of Alexander's radio invention can be seen in the U.S. patent, blah, blah, blah. So I thought that was interesting. Even broadcast radio, not entirely foreign. There's some American, but I mean, like Marconi was not American.
Sure. Yeah.
What else? Here's another really great. When you think of donuts, it was very American, right? It was actually a Russian immigrant. Adolf Levitt brought us the human automatic donut machine in 1920, which churned out perfectly whole donuts at an unprecedented pace.
It wasn't like a cop who just had a vision one day
right.
in the woods. Yeah.
Maybe he was a cop in Russia and he came over here and I have to bring you this. Or there's another one. And everyone's like, oh, there's probably some people are saying, well, these are old inventions, What about Google?
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone uses Google, although sometimes I'd recommend not using it. It's actually one one of the listeners put me up on. It's called Brave.
Okay.
It's a really good search engine. You can download it to your phone for free, and it's supposedly very private and secure. It works really good. It actually works a lot faster than Google because it blocks so many ads, and you can click on the little icon. It'll show you exactly how many ads it's blocked and like creepy things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll like give you all these warnings, give you all the statistics about who's trying to get in, who's trying to see your information.
That's pretty useful.
Yeah.
Also, I'll throw out a Ecosia.
Okay.
Which is it's like Google search engine, but every time you search, it goes a certain way to planting a tree somewhere.
Ah,
yeah,
that's cool.
So it's the whole giving back
I like
to
that.
the earth every time you search.
Nice. Well, back to Google. You did have one Michigan-born Larry Page, but Sergey Brin, the other co-creator of Google, was born in Russia.
Wow.
And there's and these are just some of the innovations made. There's the list goes on and on. I mean, I just thought the amount of patents that are earned by immigrants, I thought was amazing.
Well, they come to this country and they are looking at it from a different lens than people who were born here.
Mhm.
They look for, things to change and things to improve upon, which is, kind of the American dream. How can we all contribute to, one big goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because it is like here it's a lot easier to get your inventions out there. There is definitely a lot of countries who will kind of swallow it. The government itself will swallow it up, or try to steer you away from becoming your own company or inventor or whatever like that. But I was trying to find out a couple other examples if I had it in my list here. But it's interesting, how much this is such an immigrant country, and for people to get so skewed in this belief of like, because you're third generation or fourth generation, that there's like a difference between you and people coming here from another country. I just don't get it,
What they forget is that their grandparents, their great-grandparents, whoever it was, they had to come here. They were an immigrant.
Mhm.
You are a descendant of immigrant, whether you like it or not. That's just that's part of being an American.
Yeah. And I was reading too, like, you're right. And I, I'm kind of back to some of the job things, because I think this is, one of the main kind of talking points or dog whistles, really, that like they like to use. Oh, they're taking your jobs, like South Park. Yeah, exactly. Took our job, man. And it's like, it's not true though. Like when you have the way it works, especially in this country, I can't speak for other countries, but when one generation or one community, one culture comes here, and then after a couple generations and they make, generational wealth, and they're able to put their kids through college, those kids go on and get better jobs, and their kids get better jobs. That's the way, on average it works. It doesn't always work that way, I don't know if I did better than my parents, but but
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, I did it. But you know what I mean. But it's so you're getting higher skilled jobs. Those lower skilled jobs, you need the next influx of people that don't have that generational wealth or educational background. So that gets filled in mostly by usually immigrants. There are low skilled workers, but they've shown, I mean, statistically, you just look at it, when you deport people, low skilled working native born Americans do not take the jobs. And in fact, the statistics prove that you lose more jobs, because I think the estimate is about, for every 500,000 people you deport, you lose 64 to 65,000 jobs for native born Americans. It's like, it's a ripple effect, right? Because you have, one, there's a lot of jobs that native born Americans don't want to take. I'm sorry, if you have immigrants are in the field picking grapes and things like this, or coffee beans for 12 hours a day, what American is taking that job?
It's a rough time, yeah.
Yeah, those are hard jobs, and people here have not done those particular kind of jobs for generations, and they're not taking them. I mean, this is happening. I mean, you see, like in Florida, a lot of these farms down there, they're losing tons of money. I mean, you have like, I saw even like a statistic about, which is really sad, like farmer suicides have increased.
Yeah.
Because they're losing workers, they're losing money, they don't know what to do.
Unfortunately, you can't, or maybe I should say, fortunately, you can't have AI pick crops for you.
No, I mean there is, I'm sure they're creating some kind of. I know there's like definitely some automation.
Chappie.
Yeah, exactly.
With
right.
little pincers to grab things. Yeah, they love that.
Oh yeah, it's going to happen. And if it already isn't happening, but I don't think that's at this point. And I'm sure that technology costs a lot of money. Maybe saves you in the long run, but. It's not every farmer can't run out and buy a Chappie to pick the grapes, or whatever. But that's, so that's another aspect of it. And it just goes on and on and on. So I hope that this all stops. And I just want to say one quick thing. This has nothing to do with it has to do with immigration. But if you're out there protesting and you're tracking ICE agents and you're looking on ICE and everything like that, I recommend straight up, get a bulletproof vest, get an Army helmet, because they do not care at this point.
Be safe.
Be safe. All right, thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back again next week. Think Theory Radio.
Amy Goodman reports on the news stories rarely covered by the corporate media. Democracy Now!
The American Civil Liberties Union and the Center for Constitutional Rights have sued the Trump administration, seeking the release of the secret legal memo that's been used to justify the U.S. campaign targeting alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The U.S. has struck at least 22 boats, killing 86